Record. Hey everybody on Circle Up and Get Real. It's Jody and I am so excited to share a friend of mine. I always say I'm sharing my friends. That sounds so weird when I say that as an introduction, but it's kind of what we do here on Circle Up and Get Real. And today I want to share with you my friend Patrick Metzger. And you know what, I was thinking about this, Patrick, how we were going to start this interview, and I don't even really remember how we met. I mean, I remember hearing about you for a long time. But I think it just came to the point where I said, I need to talk to you. We need to know each other. And I think we just met for coffee back in the day, long ago, far away, when we could meet in person for coffee. Patrick, I'm going to just kind of let you tell a little bit about yourself. But you and I both are from small town North Dakota, and we have a lot of other similarities probably. But I just want to welcome you today for being with me on the Circle Up and Get Real.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I greatly appreciate you having me on here, Jody. So, to just give a little bit of background, super high level. I'm a professional EOS implementer, so I work with small to medium.
What's EOS? You got to explain that.
So EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. So basically a business coaching framework that I apply within small to medium-sized businesses. That really, in a high-level nutshell, helps small businesses achieve their vision through more clarity, better processes, getting the right people to really help them smash through ceilings and really reach their goals ultimately.
So EOS, I know about EOS, and I remember exactly when I first heard about it. It's from the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and I remember Joe Sandine, a businessman in Fargo, several years ago. We met at Caribou Coffee. I'll never forget it. He handed me this book and said, you really need to read this. And it sat on my shelf for 6 months probably, because I thought, yeah, that'll be good someday. And I really regret that I didn't read it sooner, because it is really transformational for small businesses. So how did you first hear about Traction, Patrick?
You know, Traction, I had heard some rumblings just kind of as I entered the business community, because my background is not business. I'm super non-traditional kind of path to where I am now. But, you know, I had heard rumblings from other people regarding the book Traction and such. And I'm one of those people where as soon as I'm curious about something, boom, I order a book, I start researching it, I look into it. And I was lucky enough, and I think it's kind of destiny. You and I are both destiny people, I know, Jody,
right?
That I found that book at the absolute ideal time in my life where it really resonated with me. And I realized, man, this is it right here. Like, this is what businesses need. And I started doing research. I'm a very high level fact finder. And I loved what I heard. I loved after the research and talking with people, and I just blasted off into it and rolled some enormous dice to get there.
Well, okay, so EOS, Traction, we understand all that. You just alluded to the fact that you're not a traditional business person. So I know a little bit about your background, but I'd like to start at the beginning. Well, not the beginning maybe, but kind of. You grew up in Carrington. So could you just get us to the point where you are today? Where did you come from? How did you get to be this way? Have you always had that kind of mindset?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit more.
This is going to be a long podcast, Jody.
I know, right? Well, we got all the time in the world. This is awesome. But I always like to know where people come from, because I think some people have aha transformations, and some people, when they look back, go, yeah, you know, I've kind of always been on this path. And I'm just curious what your path has been.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer. You have to know the why behind people and where they've been, because everyone has a very unique walk, and there's a reason they are where they are in their life. So going way back, you know, growing up, both my parents were teachers, educators. I loved athletic sports. I lived for them. I was one of those kids that was somewhat talented, but I was more of a hard worker and more of an intellect. And that's really what allowed me to become a successful athlete. Coming out of high school, I really wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do, other than football is what I wanted to do. And I signed to play at North Dakota State. I was a quarterback and punter. And 6 weeks before fall camp started in August, one of my best friends it was actually a girl I had dated for a while in high school, ended up being killed in a car accident. And that was really kind of the beginning of, I don't want to call it a spiral, but it was, because it really spiraled me in a way different direction than I ever thought my life would go. You know, I saw everything out in front of me, football, teaching, coaching, was really kind of what I had seen myself doing down the road. And I ended up reporting to fall camp in August, and After about a week, I was mentally on another planet. I ended up quitting the football team there. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I remember calling my parents, and my dad pulled a line from Christmas vacation and said, you know, Patrick, I wouldn't be more surprised if I woke up with my head sewn to the carpet. So he pulled a Chevy Chase line there. But, you know, later I ended up going to school at NDSU, coming from a small town, Carrington. That was not my style, you know, sitting in a classroom of 400 kids. It was just way too big for me. You know, I wasn't that kind of person at the time. And by Thanksgiving, I kind of started to get the itch to play football again, and ended up transferring over to Valley City State. Went through all the winter workouts, started spring ball, and realized it just was not going to work. I had 3 screws put into my throwing hand in my senior year of high school. I had an ACL that was partially torn, and I just wasn't willing to start at 20 or 21. You know, I always look further down the road probably than most people. And so football never happened for me, and I never ever imagined it not.
Yeah.
And what that led me into was coaching. And I ended up graduating college from Valley City State, got into coaching right away in Castleton, just outside of Fargo here, became a head coach within my second year. Was way overwhelmed, thought I was prepared, and man, was not, we'll put it that way. And as I taught and coached for 8 years, I believe, in Castleton, it felt like I came to the point of a crossroads where I needed something different, and something was missing. And I didn't know what it was at the time. Something just was not right. And in hindsight, looking back, I was chasing something to try to make up for something I had lost. You know, I was trying to chase a dream or a fulfillment that I felt subconsciously like was kind of taken from me. And I tried to put so many eggs in one basket, trying to get back what I felt like was really taken from me, you know.
Do you feel like it was at the football? Was that what you're alluding to? The football was taken from you? Okay. Yep. And at this point, if you can stop the story right here, do you think what you're describing to me sounds a little bit like victim mentality, which is it was
absolutely
okay. And so at that point, would you say you felt kind of like a victim, like this was taken from me?
I don't know if I directly identified that, but it absolutely was 100%. And when I hit that crossroads, I knew I needed to either get out of teaching and coaching, or I needed a new environment. And I was lucky. I had an opportunity in Fargo. Came to Fargo, taught, coached, and I got into my 3rd year of teaching there. So it was my 11th year, I believe, overall of teaching. And it was like I ran into a brick wall at the end of September. Truly felt
September, so early in the school year.
It was I had no thoughts of it going into that school year at the end of August. And it was like I just hit a brick wall, and truly felt like I was all of a sudden being led to do something else. And it became really, really clear to me, Patrick, you're not on the path that you need to be on. And it really took that huge gamble and that huge change to really fully expose that for me.
Okay, so hang on right here. In this gap, end of September, you said you hit a brick wall, but you felt like something was calling you to something else. Now, can you kind of expound on that a little bit? Was that a spiritual awakening to you or something? How would you describe that?
You know, I've thought about that and been asked that so many times, and I still can't identify exactly what it was. It was just a feeling of going to work every day knowing, God, Patrick, you're capable of so much more, and there's something else that you are just being pulled to. You know, and believe me, I have the utmost respect for teachers. It is a thankless job. It's one of the most important, in our society. But the monotony of it, the regular day-to-day and routine of the school years and things like that, we're starting to kind of take their toll on me. You know, I've always loved teaching, coaching. It's the biggest piece of me. You know, it's my true passion and cause is teaching and helping others really become more, you know.
So you had role models, your parents, and teaching and coaching to you had a specific pathway. It sounds like classroom teaching, coaching, sports, because what else did we know? Teaching and coaching were what happened in a classroom.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess I'm a bit older than you. So for me, there was nothing else. That's all it could be. Like you, my parents, or my mom at least, was a teacher, and I never wanted to be a classroom teacher, but I didn't know the alternative. I didn't know what else there was. And so maybe you have some nature and some nurture around teaching and coaching. When did it become clear to you that there was another alternative to traditional classroom teaching and coaching?
It didn't become reality until I decided to officially resign that fall. Um, you
So
know,
right away that fall you just did, right
I
in the
did.
middle. Wow.
Yeah, it was literally within, I remember I sat down with my wife in our patio and we had the discussion that September. I looked right at her and I said, I got to get out. I said, I don't know what the next phase is or what the next play in my life is. But I said, it's not this. This isn't the long term. So I don't want to continue going down this path. And teaching's tough because you really get hamstringed. I mean, if you teach somewhere for 15, 20 years or you're in the career that long, it's really hard to back out, go somewhere else. It's really tough financially. It's tough finding where you're going to be valued. So I knew if it wasn't going to be my long-term play, and I felt like there was something else out there for me, then I need to do that, and I need to do it now.
Mm.
And it was an enormous roll of the dice. I turned in my resignation, and luckily I had the opportunity of leaving teaching. I hopped onto an executive recruiting team. So I had someone place a lot of faith in me to completely career transition like that because they saw the potential in me. I was Kara Jorvig with Allegro Group. She was a phenomenal mentor for me. But I mean, when I was looking at leaving teaching, I had zero clue what I was going to do. And it's funny because I actually went into her group to talk to them about what my potential transition plan could be. And by the end of our conversation, it turned into, hey, would you be interested in working for us, actually?
Wow.
So
What
a
kind of,
fate is.
sure. What time of year was this? Go back to the September thing. You resigned in September. What's the timing for you then? Did you finish out the semester?
No, I was out of teaching at Thanksgiving,
Wow.
at Thanksgiving break.
Okay. And then from Thanksgiving till, how long was it till you started your new position?
Yep. Yeah. So ironically, there was a lot that happened in a few weeks. Um, when I decided to resign within the next few weeks, my wife and I also found out we were going to be adoptive parents because we had been
Oh,
on a
wow.
list for a year.
Wow.
So literally, I believe I believe it. I turned in my resignation, and I think it was a week later we got the call, and boom, you're going to be parents in 3 months.
You have no job now and you're going to be parent.
Yep.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And looking back, I really don't know how we handled that situation, other than just a lot of faith and just trusting. It was a lot of faith and just trusting. And hey, if you roll the dice on yourself and you commit to something, you're never going to lose.
Mm.
If you refuse to give up, we will never lose at anything.
Wow. You said something earlier when we first started talking about how you were successful at sports in high school because you were so intellectual. Does that have anything to do with what you're talking about right now, where you said, I set my mind on something and nothing can stop me? Is there a correlation there between what you said about your high school football career and maybe your success now?
I don't know. I think the biggest lessons I took from athletics, Jody, were just everything I preached while I coached. The grit, the determination, the teamwork, the refuse to quit. I mean, all of those things are really, looking back, what I loved about athletics. It wasn't football that I loved. It was the grind. It was the process. It was the journey of building something, of trying to reach something bigger and better that truly resonated with me and what I truly loved about it. But you don't realize that until a long time later, you know.
Well, I don't think you know. I would think then as a student, let's just talk about being a high school student. What else do you think of than what you're in the present time, which is now the next football game or the next play or whatever it is? You don't have a long range goal for
Yeah.
what my life is going to look like. You just don't have that yet. But
Yep.
I love how you connected that. And I also love that you said it wasn't football I loved, it was the process of football. And so if we're and again, I get really off on other tangents, but if we're attached to things, like if you're attached to football being the way or the only way you can be a success in your life, you miss out on the opportunity to take the learning that you're describing of the football process and applying it to something else, in this case, your life and a bigger picture.
Yeah, it was, it was I talk about this in the keynote talks that I give too. It was a huge piece of my identity. And when I finally decided to leave it, it was like a chapter. It was like the final chapter in a book that I was just trying to read over and over and over. It was something I just had to close the book on and say, you know what, that was a hell of a good book, but we're on to the next book.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so let's pick it up now where we left off, which was Thanksgiving.
Yep. And so we had found out we were going to adopt our daughter. So I'm a few months into recruiting. We end up being blessed with a newborn out of the Minneapolis area. We were down there for the whole thing. We got to know birth mom. It was, it's been the greatest thing I have ever been a part of. Nothing else compares to it. I don't believe anything will.
Wow.
And then a few months after that, I had somebody approach me about a job opportunity, and health wellness has always been a big thing in my wheelhouse. And I got approached to manage a gym in Castleton. And with our new daughter and a lot of autonomy I was going to be given in managing this gym, I thought it was a good stepping stone. And I loved recruiting. I hated leaving it. It was really, really tough to tell them I was going to leave after they had invested so much into me. But I felt like it was the next step I needed to take along the way. And I did it. And 9 months later, I'll shorten the story, I ended up getting fired.
Oh, really?
After basically achieving everything that this person wanted me to do, plus some. Never should have gotten involved with this person. Was warned not to, but I did. And I ended up getting fired. And a few months before that, I had launched an online health wellness coaching platform and was starting to work with clients all across the nation, some into Canada. And about 2 months after that is when I got fired. And then I was really at a crossroads. Do I take my business and try to push that to the next level? Or do I go back into teaching? Do I look for something else in business? What am I going to do?
Wow.
And my wife and I, we had very extensive talks about this. And it really came down to just following your heart. And I'm a big believer, Jody, in when you have those big, difficult decisions in your life, every one you make allows you to make an even bigger one yet down the road. It gives you the confidence in yourself, especially to do so.
Right.
So after leaving teaching, boom, that was a huge, huge bump. It proved to me a lot to myself that I can do this. I ended up getting fired. What's the next step? Boom, let's roll the dice again, because it was all on me. So I decided to launch into my business full time. And did that for about 3 months. And then I saw a ceiling coming. Wow. And that ceiling was, how am I going to scale this thing? How am I going to start making the money I really want to be making? My time was already starting to get tapped out every week. So I had a friend that was involved that had previously worked with a business coach out of San Diego. And I ended up calling this guy out of the blue for some random business advice. And he said, hey, I worked with this coach out of San Diego. His name is Peter Scott. He goes, he is phenomenal. He said, you should really check this guy out. So I ended up connecting with this Peter. Absolutely loved him. He was like a brother from another mother. And my wife and I discussed, what is the next step? And I said, I think this is it right here. I said, this guy's got the answers. And it sounds crazy because, everybody tries to get sold on stuff. Oh, I have the answer for that. Oh, I guarantee this. I guarantee that. There's something about this guy that I just really, really trusted. And we discussed, how are we going to do this?
Yeah, keep going.
And we don't put money on credit cards, but we go, put on a credit card and we'll figure it out. And this is you got to understand, this is so against my wife's like to the core. She's an A-type OCD. I love her to death, but this is just not her style. Right. And it wasn't mine either. We said, put on the credit card, we'll figure it out. I started working with the guy. Within 2 weeks, he'd already paid for himself.
Wow.
And absolutely just launched my business into the stratosphere. And along this process, shortly thereafter, that couple of weeks we started working together, we had a really heart-to-heart conversation. I remember we hopped on a call, our weekly call, and he started the call by looking at me and he goes, "Patrick, what are we doing here, man?" I go, "What do you mean, Peter?" He goes, "What are we doing?" And I had no idea what he was talking about. And finally he goes, "You know, Patrick, I've been thinking about this." He goes, "I know you'd love the health wellness stuff." He goes, I know you're good at working with your clients. He goes, "You've already shown that." He goes, "I can see that." He said, "You have so much more gas in the tank than what you're doing." And that was the first time I ever felt like in my life, somebody just kicked me in the ass and turned me around to face myself in the mirror.
Wow.
And I felt like when I looked in that mirror, I finally saw what I was really truly capable of and what I was not tapping into finally.
So, okay, I'm connecting a couple dots here. So going back, as you were describing all of the steps along your journey, it sounded to me like there was always something not quite there, something you knew deep down, but you didn't know what it was. And you said he kicked you in the ass and had you look in the mirror. Maybe it was the looking in the mirror the whole time that was missing?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yep.
What was that process like for you?
It was the best thing I had ever done for myself. And one of the very first activities that I did with him was writing out your own hero's journey. And I always tell others, the best book you can ever read is your own story. And 99% of people never write their own story and read it.
Ooh, that's good. And then, write it and read it. That's good.
Yes.
Because
you're always writing it. You're always writing it.
Yeah.
But how many times do we stop, look back, and read it from the beginning and see why we are who we are? Why are we where we are, right? Because those things, there's so much in there that can give you so much guidance moving forward. But I think so many people neglect to look back and dig out the influences and the challenges and the risks and the decisions that you've made in your life, and how do those affect you? Because you have to face those things before you're ever going to be able to move forward into that next chapter per se.
So in your work then, is this what you do with clients now and keynotes with your traction and EOS?
Yeah, I talk a lot on, the self-improvement, really diving into the adversity, the self-development, and really all my keynote stuff is really, the large majority of it is really structured around the obstacles and challenges in your life not being negatives, but they're, the obstacle is truly the way. One of my favorite books by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. And very few people look at those happenings in their life as those.
And so very few people do that, which means that either there are very few people that are going to be clients of yours, or the market is untapped. How do you look at that?
When it comes to, it's kind of two different things, Jody, honestly. The adversity obstacles piece is more related to kind of keynotes, but it definitely does play into the EOS and the business stuff too, because every business has to be able to do that. Every leader has to be able to do that too. The clients we work with, they really have to fit two specifications they have to be 100 out of 100. If you're talking scale wise, they have to be open, honest, transparent, be willing to look in the mirror. And that is by far the most important thing. And if their leadership is not willing to do that, they're not going to be a good fit for EOS. So primarily that's first and foremost.
So your keynotes get you to those people? Is that what you're finding? Or do you think, because I can see you doing two things: keynotes to inspire people and get them fired up? I'm guessing you probably do that inside of companies or for organizations and meetings and things like that. Is that true?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then from that, you could gather some clients, perhaps maybe in the EOS process. And if the percentage of people who are willing to do the work that's needed is so low, I'm wondering if that process is allowing you to vet out those people quickly enough for you. Because I know you a little
Mhm.
bit, and I know you're quick. You're a guy who wants to get going.
Yep.
And do you ever feel like you have to convince people that looking in the mirror would be a good thing for them?
Yeah, I mean, it really ties into kind of the second specification is they have to be growth oriented. So we're looking first and foremost for companies that are very self-aware, but really, really value growth. So whether they're struggling like hell to reach that growth, or whether they're doing really well, but they know there's even more.
Mm.
Those are the things we're looking for. So really, if we have to sit down with a company and convince them that they are those two things, it's going to be tough. They're not going to fit our client avatar. But sometimes you do. I would say more often than not, you sit down with companies and they aren't really quite sure. And you're either going to close them up and they run out the door scared, or they really crack open and say, let's go, let's
Mm.
do this.
When you say you talk to companies, who do you talk to? I mean, obviously you can't talk to a company. Who do you talk to? Who's your person in that gets you in the door?
Yeah, numerous different people will get me in a door, but it's always someone on the leadership team, typically that conversation starts with.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, the process, how we start with a company, if someone were to approach me, we sit down with their leadership team and we do what we call a 90-minute meeting. So we give them all the nuts and bolts of EOS. We go over all the tools, but a huge, huge part of that meeting, half of that meeting, that 90-minute meeting, is talking through with that company. What are the biggest obstacles, challenges? Where are you at right now? Let's lay out all those things on the table. And then let's figure out where do you really want to get to see if we're actually going to be a match and can help you.
Mhm.
So we're really looking for those two things. Where are you at? Where do you want to get to? And getting all the cards on the table.
What's your greatest joy in that process? What do you love most about that process?
By far, it's seeing people light up and drift off into another world when they start talking about what could be.
Mm.
And I think it's you find it in individuals as well, because everybody has a vision of who they really want to be, what they really want to become. They have dreams, they've had them forever. But the people that don't go after their dreams, it's because they're scared, they're fearful of something. The money, they think is the issue holding them back. There's always something there. So it's challenging to always vet out what is truly holding someone back. They're always going to get in their own way though,
Yeah.
in one way, shape or another. But that is by far the biggest thing, is when you can really get someone where you see them almost mentally drift off onto another level, talking about where they really want to take it and where they really want to be. That's someone that I want to work with.
Well, because I wonder how many people allow themselves any space to dream anymore. I mean, we've been so conditioned that daydreaming is a bad thing, and we don't put time in our schedules to allow ourselves to do that because we're so tied to somebody else's agenda for us. So I bet when they have a chance to be with you just in that 90-minute meeting, I don't know, does it take a while for them to feel like they can do that, or do they come in with
Mhm.
you and go, "Oh my God, thank you"? How did,
Yeah, it's, to kind of touch on the first part you mentioned there, Jody, it's the rat race of life.
Mhm.
We're all way too busy and we have way too many what we think are priorities. And that's why a lot of us are very unhappy, unfulfilled people, is because we're chasing all these things that we think are important, but we don't realize at the end of the day they aren't the things that are ever going to make us happy or feel fulfilled. So your average person, and it's no different for a company, is you have to prioritize based on what are your values, what's important to you. Everything always comes back to those items. So I forgot the second part of what you had said there.
I think I said, what was I saying? I don't know. I don't remember either. I mean, I get up. Sometimes I get far ahead of myself too, but I know you do that as well because you
Oh
are
yeah.
a visionary too. And so You say you're not. You say you're more of an integrator, but you're a visionary and you have big plans and goals and dreams for yourself. And so when you're talking about how the joy you get is when you see somebody drifting off into a dream, I think you're because that's what you like to do, it seems. Is that true for you? Because I can't imagine grass growing under your feet.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we always look to help people through the problems that we have overcome ourselves or are currently going through ourselves. You know, you look at addiction's a great example. You know, who are addiction counselors? Former addicts.
Mm.
You know, you look at coaches. What do they coach people on? A lot of the times, it's the items that they have struggled through themselves, and they say, "Hey, I know exactly who you are and where you were, and I want to be able to help you through that because I know what it's like and I know how I can do it for you."
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And you know what? I think I told you before about this coach that I hired who is helping me through that. We think we're supposed to use marketing to what he says, please the SEO gods, right? And do what we're supposed to do to make sure people find us. And when we do that, we attract people to our plasticness, not to our authenticity. And on the Get Real Circle and on this podcast, this is all about getting real. And what does it mean when you're attracting people to a fake you?
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, I mean, of course you're going to be a better coach for the people who are going through the things you went through. It would seem. It seems obvious to me. I don't know. Maybe that's not
Yeah.
as obvious to other people.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of been something I've learned over time, honestly, Jody, to just listen and be able to crack people open in a hurry. And a huge part of that is just the listening. You know,
You
listen.
okay? So I'm going to talk because you do this, and I want to say this before I forget. We had a great conversation just last night. You and I were at an event and we were talking about listening, that very point right there. And you are a fantastic listener. I can speak from experience. And I would love you to share how you got to be such a great listener and how people feel safe being cracked open by you.
Mm-hmm. I think kind of two items there. Number one, I was a former teacher, and when you're in teaching, you're around a lot of women.
And we can say that, everybody. We know. Okay, we've talked about gender stuff before,
and
so yes.
and that's just the way it is, and it's great, it's fabulous, you know. But you have to listen.
Mm.
You know, women are phenomenal listeners. You know, so if you aren't being one yourself, you're not going to fit in. You're not going to fit in there. You know, plain and simple. And the other item is the fast. I mean, this is so, to me, it's so clear, but I think it's a struggle for a lot of people. The more vulnerable you can be with somebody, and the sooner you can do it, the sooner you make that emotional connection, and you get trust with people. You earn trust with people. You know, when I sit down with strangers, I mean, and I start talking about the most vulnerable things in my life and the most challenging moments of my life within the first 3 minutes, they look at me and just go, "Wow, I guess I could tell this guy anything because he's dumping it on me already right now."
Mm.
And that's so important to any relationship that you have. If you want it to be worthwhile, man, you got to be transparent. You got to get vulnerable yourself.
So you model that right away in the first 3 minutes of a conversation with a new potential client?
With anybody. With
Wow.
anybody. I mean, I've had people tell me in the first 15 minutes of meeting them, they start telling me things, and I actually had someone do this winter. They cut me off during their own, they were talking, and they said, "Why am I telling you this? I just met you." And I
I,
take it
I
as
can
a,
I can speak to that. Yes, it's very true, Patrick.
and I take it as a huge, huge compliment.
Good.
And I only try to improve on it more and more and more every day.
Yeah.
But to me, that's important. You know, I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want to talk about politics. You know, I want to talk about what drives people. I want to talk about what lights people up. I want to know where you're going and what you're about and where you've been. You know, those are the things that I want to talk about with somebody.
Yeah. For what purpose? What is the purpose of those conversations for you? Because it's great in the moment, but I know there's more to it for you.
I think a lot of it is about just connection,
Mm.
and I love to help. So the more I know about you, the more I can see potential opportunity to help you in some way. Because I think that's, at the end of the day, that's my big why. And that's a discovery that I made a while back of my big why is the more people I can help see their full potential and capitalize on that, it's a pay it forward effect.
And then what? And then what happens when we're all paying that forward?
I don't know.
Because think about that. But think about what the world would be like if we were all paying it forward in that way, paying that forward. And if you were helping people achieve what is in their heart that maybe they didn't even know, and then they're paying that forward for other people, you know, where we find ourselves now in our divided world, it would not be that way because people would be looking for ways to make that kind of impact. Because I'm sharing that with you. I love that vision. I love what would happen in the world if we did that.
And unfortunately, I think most people look for ways to divide themselves from others rather than unify. You know, when people meet somebody new, I think initially, yes, they might look for similarities and commonalities and things to like about them, but it can very quickly turn into the things they maybe don't with someone. You know, they look for and I don't know, maybe that's not to say that that's me, I guess. I mean, not that I haven't been there and go there sometimes, because I think we all do, but I think a lot of people look for things that will separate them or that make them different rather than the same.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You mean separate themselves from other people, or separate the other people from themselves?
I think more separating that other, of seeing how they're different, or what's maybe what they're not a fan of in somebody.
I see.
You know, instead of giving grace and always looking for the good and the positive and the commons, and trying to forget about the rest of it. You know,
Kyle, why do you think that is?
I think part of it's society, and I won't even dive into that. We could go into all the stuff like social media and all that, but part of it, I think, is just human nature. It's a self-defense mechanism of always be on the alert for what may harm you, or what isn't so great.
Then that seems like it comes from the limbic, well, the fight, flight, freeze, the gut, the instinct part of us, which is not what makes us human. It's what our animals do. And if we're doing that mostly, it sounds like you said earlier something about fear. And if fear is running our lives and we're afraid of what would happen if somebody attacked us for being vulnerable, maybe, that might be what's really different about you when people say, why am I telling you this? Because you're not like that. I don't think you're wired to find what's different about people. I think you're wired to find what brings us together.
I think, kind of coming back to what you said earlier, Jody, I think a lot of us are so distracted and so misprioritized that we run on our animal brain, you know, more so than, because when you're focused and you're in the zone and you aren't distracted, you know, you think of the moments in your life when you aren't distracted. You're sitting by the lake, you know, calm water out in front of you or whatever, you're doing your thing that you love doing. Think of how much more focus you have and how much more willing you are to accept things or to think about things to try to understand them rather than to just judge them.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, so then that would imply to me that if the first thing we did is just take some time, not be on that rat race, then the way you described the lake and the way you described the water, to me, I could see it. And in that moment, it slows things down. And then we're not always chasing things. So it doesn't sound like it's that difficult. It's just maybe that we've been so conditioned the other way.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, you look at how our brain is wired. We are not wired to constantly be going. You know, if anybody wants to take one thing out of this podcast, is every hour or so, take 5 minutes to do nothing.
Good challenge.
And I don't mean, you know, oh, I'm looking at my phone, I'm not doing anything. No, I mean to not do anything, to sit and stare out a window, to stop and literally smell the roses. I mean, it is it is amazing what it will do for your clarity and your energy levels. You know, the reason people are burned out at the end of the day, a lot of times it doesn't have anything to do with sleep or things like that. It's because your brain is going all day and your brain is an energy hog.
Hmm.
And if you keep pushing it, it's overload long before the end of every day. You just tap out early every day.
Well, so did you always understand that, or did you come to that in some way for yourself? Like, I don't imagine you having always been somebody who could stop and do nothing for 5 minutes. I mean, how did
Oh
you?
no, I was the go 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 go, and I still need to work on that, you know. But I'm a learner. I always have been, and I'm a sponge for knowledge, and I try to read and soak up anything I can that will help me and help me help anyone else in any way. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone.
Do you have a routine, a 5 minute routine every hour or anything like that that you
You
do?
know, a lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, I do that every hour." No, I don't. I don't. But I realize when I'm starting to hit that point, and I'm very good at shutting it down and doing what I have to do,
Do
or
you?
fairly good. I won't say really good.
Yeah, well, it's a practice, I'm guessing. Do you so talking about that, I know one of my favorite books is The One Thing by Gary Keller, and he talks about multitasking being a lie. We think we can do so many things, but when you think about it, we're never multitasking because we're stopping and starting. And so when we stop and start something, I can't remember the numbers. It takes like 15 minutes of
Hmm.
stopping and then 15 minutes to start it back up again. And we've lost a half hour right there when we think we're doing all those things. So even if we took, it doesn't even have to be 5 minutes, maybe, a minute to stop and slow down, do something, do nothing for a couple minutes, and then pick yourself back up. It still can be a process that you don't have to take 30 minutes out of your life to take 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you're sitting at your desk, you know, every once in a while, just stop, sit back, close your eyes, and breathe deeply for a minute.
Mm.
A lot
Yeah,
of times, something as simple as that can be enough to recharge you for the next few hours.
right, right. Good point. Well, my watch, I don't know if you do you have one of these smart watches?
I do
So
not know.
my smartwatch tells me when I haven't done anything for a while, and it pops on and says, "Time to do some torso twists," or it has little things. So you
Yep.
can actually set things like that to just do something simple like that. And yeah, it's easy to override it. It's easy to go, "I'm smarter than you," watch, and yet to your point about being burned out and being, hitting the wall, you hit the wall in your life.
Hmm.
And some of those things, that's probably why people would choose to work with you, because like you said earlier, you've been there, you've done a lot of these things, and you might be a really great guide for people in those areas.
Yeah, I try to really, you know, and everything I've always done, you know, it's a blessing and a curse. I've kind of become I like to know a lot about everything,
Hmm.
you know, and that's been a huge focus of mine in the last year just alone has been really niching down and getting way deeper in just a couple areas. But I feel like my mistakes of the past years have really prepared me very well to look at things and help people very holistically as well.
Hmm. So when you look at the whole big picture and then you say you're focusing down, there's a couple, still holistic, it's kind of an oxymoron in some of that conversation. So what would it be for you if you niched down to a couple things holistically?
Yeah, you know, if I think it always comes back to values. You know, if I look at the biggest values in my life, it's always family, it's always learning and growth, it's always helping other people. You know, if I think of three things in my life, um, you know, most people would throw faith in there. I feel like I'm a very strong person of faith, but I don't know. I've never considered that. It just doesn't resonate as a one of the top values with me.
Mhm.
You know, it's just kind of one of those non-negotiable tag-alongs. I feel like for me,
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, but yeah, for me, it's always been family, my health, wellness, taking care of myself, learning and growth, and then how can I take all of that really and help others with it.
So what's the way that you spend your day, if you could say the best day at work is doing what? What would it be like?
That's a good question. I would say a well-spent day is at the end of the day, I see the impact that I've made in others.
Mm.
When others have learned it, others have applied it, they've implemented the things I've tried to help them with. They've taken the lessons and they're going with them now. And you can see that.
How do you
And
see that?
that's a teacher in me.
How do you see that? What do you see when you said you see that in them? How do you see it?
I don't know if it's seeing it more so than, I guess, to reword that really is I'm able to dig into it to identify it.
Mm. Is it a feeling, do you think? I say, is it a feeling, do you think? That's kind of odd, but I believe you and I are similar in that it's a feeling you get from somebody, an energetic feeling, which is probably why in the first 3 minutes of a conversation with you, people feel like they can tell you anything. There's just something, and I can't even put words to it really. It's a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Do
I
you,
would agree. I would agree
right?
to an extent with that. Yep.
So what's
And I
the
mean,
extent?
what's that?
What's the extent to an extent?
I think the other piece of that is, when I'm able to be very vulnerable, people get vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
like it's more easily identifiable
Mm-hmm.
when they are achieving that, or when they are putting the pieces together and they are seeing like, man, I get it.
Mm.
I get it.
So from the time you make that connection, because that can happen relatively quickly, it sounds like that first connection, and them getting it, whatever it is. Can you explain, in your experience of working with people, is that a process that happens over time? Is it dependent on the person? How does it manifest for you in that way when they get it?
Oh, there's so many variables that play into it where it's completely dependent on what it is. Some things take a lot of time. Some things are infinite,
Mm.
where it's always. I think most things are probably always a work in progress.
Yeah,
And it's
well, that's
just